On the Beat with Tony Morrone, and we're here at QED Media with Dave Beatty, who's got quite the history of recording. We're going to talk to Dave about what he's up to lately and where it all started. Also, Dave, the time I saw you way back when, you were a musician in a band called Plateau. Give us a bit of history of your guitar playing, where it all started.
Oh, okay. I started playing guitar in the mid-'60s and was in a few recording acts. First one was called The Incursion with Daniel Lanois and Bob Deutsch. And we recorded at Red Shea Studio in Brantford. That was in, I think, 1968 or something like that. And went on to other recording acts, Vehicle in Hamilton, and then a few members left and started a band called Plateau, which was the band you saw play in London. Mm-hmm. And we started our own recording studio, Cosmic Sound, in Hamilton. The Incursion also, after that, Dan started the studio in his mother's place, so I knew a bit about that, working there, and we recorded quite a few bands from the Hamilton area. And when Plateau started to tour, we merged with a studio in Toronto called Cottingham Sound in the late 70s. And I did a lot of albums, Doug and the Slug, and Chris de Burgh, and Max Webster, and John Baldry there.
And you had an intern who really turned out to be one of Canada's top bands after.
Yes, Al Connolly from Glass Tiger. He was our intern, and he did a great job there and went on to a lot of success with Glass Tiger. And later when I formed QED, we used to have the members of Glass Tiger come there and demo their other songs and put their ideas together for the album. Some of the guys would go out west with Jim Valance, and the rest would come to QED. And it was a fun time, bidding for songs on the albums. And
so QED actually was in a theater down the first QED. I remember back in the early 90s. I worked there on a movie soundtrack. But what about some of the bands that you'd recorded in the theater you were located in down there?
Yeah, there are a few bands. Sonic Youth, Kenny McLean, the Worrell Brothers, the Nylons, Bobby Curtola, the Good Brothers. There was a lot of cool bands. It's called the Great Hall on Queen Street in Dovercourt in Toronto. It's still pretty active. I think Dan Lanois just played a concert there recently.
You'd moved on to another location then on Geary Avenue, which you were there for, what, 17 years?
17, maybe even 18. It was quite a long time. We were pretty established. We started some of the first internet radio stations and TV stations there. And
you had the Friday Night
put a lot
Live.
of albums together. Nelly Furtado started there. And that other studio at the Great Hall, I think Sarah McLachlan's first recordings were there too.
Heading off to the internet stuff with Friday Night Live you did at the
I think it was about 3 or 4 years. We did a Friday Night Live internet show, a live broadcast, webcast.
And you had a few radio stations based out of there.
Yes. We had the Global Groove Network was out of there. We had Woofer Radio, a blues station, I can't remember the name. Grooverance was there. This is in the late 90s, and before internet TV was really popular. It was fun to explore it, though.
Now, some of the bands you had recorded at that location were huge, such as Roy Young, who played with the Beatles way back when. Tell us about that.
Well, Roy was playing with Tony Sheridan, and they hired the Beatles to do the Beatles' first recordings. So My Bonnie, Sweet Georgia, Brown, I think, and When the Saints Come Marching In. And years later, when I was managing John Baldry and I'd been recording him at Cottingham Sound, that's when I met Roy Young, and he came back years later. He was had the piano John wrote Imagine on. He was doing this thing for victims of family abuse at the CN Tower, and he called me up. He says, the PA doesn't sound right, you better get down here and help me out. And I heard his story about the Beatles. I didn't even know he had played with the Beatles and all this stuff before. So I ended up producing a couple albums with him, and some of the guys in Wings came over to play with him, and Roxy Music, and it was quite a troupe. They called the Star Combo. I guess they'd all played at the Star Club back in the day.
And people like Andy Kim were coming to record at your studio there on Gear.
Yeah, I put a lot of shows together with Andy and recorded him. Jack Soul, Nelly Furtado, some of the guys in Scott Page from Pink Floyd, and like hundreds of bands came and recorded at QED. Fifi Dobson, David Usher. It was great.
It was a great television facility too, not just a good recording studio, and a great stage, a rehearsal stage too. I mean, it was designed like an actual stage of a big concert.
Yeah, it was quite a big sound stage. I think about 1,300 square foot room, and put a lot of things. The classic albums live. It was home for them for 7 years, and Fifi Dobson put her stuff together there. Shiloh, recently done with Dolls. I hope they're doing well. They're a nice young act coming along. And
you also had a green screen there. There was I remember Mark Terry had done his Antarctica photographs.
Yes.
Putting icebergs in your studio there.
Yeah, he's done really well with his series. You probably know more about where he went than I do.
Oh, he's traveled the world talking about global warming and things. Yeah, but Mark had helped with the Friday Night Live show for.
That's right.
Quite
He
a
was
while.
he was cutting in the front room, a couple of the broadcasts. That's right. Yeah, that was a fun time.
Going back with Roy Young being with the Beatles, you actually had spent some time with Paul McCartney. Give us a little bit of history with Paul. I mean, you were these were back in the days when you were doing the festival circuit. What's the history of that?
Well, it started out with Canada Jam at Mossport, and then Heatwave at Mossport, and then we started doing a lot of the outdoor festivals and stuff, and that led me to end up working with CPI and festival concerts, and I did maybe 900 concerts with CPI, a lot of the Michael Jackson and David Bowie and Pink Floyd and the Rolling Stones and Peter Gabriel. And
But you spent like 4 days with Paul McCartney?
yes, I did. I looked after him. Anytime he left the room, I had to kind of just make sure everything was going smoothly with the greet and meets and just moving the entourage around.
And he had Linda with him at the time?
Yes, he had Linda and he had Stella and James with them, and they were a lot of fun. The kids, it was like the family having a great time. Paul was going back out and touring, and had a bit of a shaky start when I first got there. I came up to the door. I knew he was which room he was in at the Four Seasons there, and I went to knock on the door, and I could hear a piano playing on the other side, and it was Eleanor Rigby, and I thought, gee, this is Paul McCartney playing Eleanor Rigby in my town, and I went from being nobody messes with me to a little bit on the nervous side through that 4 minutes waiting for him to finish the song. But we finally met, and it was just a good time. I always looked up to him with his music. He was a big influence on me, and it was a little surreal at first, hanging out with him.
And not only was it Paul McCartney, you spent time with Peter Gabriel, David Bowie. Mm-hmm. Give us just a quick rundown. It's like the Heart. Drop a few names for us.
I don't know. I guess I was in charge of security of the Michael Jackson's Victory Tour. That was a pretty interesting phase. 10 days with them. Got to know Nancy Wilson pretty good, and Hart. And, when Peter was in town, he played a couple nights, and we went out for dinner and hung out and exchanged some crazy stories and Fairlight discs and stuff. And I've been a big fan of his too. He's something else. He's a big influence.
So we're moving on to the new location here. What are the plans here? It's a bigger facility. It's a fantastic, the Canon 205 Studios.
Yeah, well, it's a big complex, and they had some things going on. They were looking at doing some TV shows and I had the Friday show and some other things, some pilots I want to develop. So we built quite a soundstage here for a big live audience, for doing live TV shows off the floor. Put in a couple of Pro Tools suites, some video editing suites, and a huge green wall with full cyc. And there's just a lot of headroom here in Hamilton. The fantastic musicians in town. It's going to be a real treat to explore the local scene.
I was actually here for that weekend. You had quite a bit of talent, local Hamilton talent playing. Give us a little brief rundown of what that was all about.
Well, there's the Factory Media Center in town had a recent setback with a robbery, and they needed some computers. They're doing a lot for the local community here, and so we donated our facilities and services to have a fundraiser for them. And I think 9 bands, maybe 11 bands, different acts came and played on our 2 different sound stages.
And you had the full lighting system. Well, it actually wasn't even the full lighting. There's some lights weren't even connected, but it was...
Yeah, there's still about another 20 lights to go, but we had about 40 that we set up, so it looked pretty good. The photography was quite something.
And the audio was... I was sitting in the control room listening, and like fantastic sound. Oh,
thanks. Yeah, it came off pretty good. I was pretty happy about the event, and it's led to a lot of new things to develop here. But my friend Alex Zafer was managing the Canon 205 studios, and back when I was managing Rick James's band, he would do our websites and stuff, and he's quite a talented guy, and he was developing a new show with Raquel Rakovac called Queen Bees TV. And I thought, well, let's put our Friday Night Live show and the Queen Bees and get some hosts and do some screen tests and maybe start developing that and some of the other pilot ideas we have for TV shows and turn this place into like a small TV station and production development house.
And the facility looks great so far, and it's going to be moving on to bigger things than what I've seen.
Oh yeah, the future's looking very good in Hamilton.
Okay, so we've been speaking to Dave Beatty here at QED Media at the Canon 205 studios. Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome. Thank you, Tony.